American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis of the directed by directed by Tony Kaye, written and American History Edward Norton and Edward Furlong as Daniel Beverly D'Angelo as Doris Every Books as Dr. Robert Sweeney, the release date October 30, 1988, Intelligence, Crime, Drama, Social, Story, and Stormwater. It's rating that it's restricted rating, and if you don't remember, it's summary. The story unfolds is the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on Derek, a former Nazi skiing who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and change. Derek's transformation begins as he begins to question his secrets while experiencing prison, and he strained family relationship with our general. It is the present story of Derek's efforts to shoots his young brother Danny from following in his footsteps. Bit of a flashback depicts Derek's rise to neo-Nazi action fueled by racial tension, personal loss, and social influence. A bit over the climax. Derek's efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when Danny, inspired by Derek's past, becomes involved in a racial motivated attack, leading to violence and tragedy. The themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes and the themes and narrative. Firstly, talk about racism and hate. Let's explore how prejudice in person influences and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Derek's journey from hate to understanding demonstrate that change is possible, but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and in what the cycle of violence. Repeated scenes of racial violence emphasizes how there is more violence printing and endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serves as core message of the film. The if you don't have familiar influence, the film underscore the impact. The film underscore the film underscore the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping lyrics and action, direct relationship with his fathers, religious legacy, and his brother and highlight this theme of identity and transformation, directs evolution, for identity, how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined identity. If you don't character directly beyond the charismatic but deeply troubled young man who become a new magic skin and his transformation from negative emotion in the emotion to anyone emotions powerful performance capture their complexity from the media. Impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's footsteps, legacy livelihood, perception of it, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, competition and tries to guide anyone away from it and whether if we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography in the film. We talk about editing, rapid cuts, during violence, scenes, and charge and integrity. We talk about facts, facts are used with activity to provide backstory and context. And if we talk about music, the soundtrack features rap and rock tracks that reflect the character, environment, and theme. If we talk about the use of music. Underscore things of rebellion and if you talk about narrative structure, non-linear storytelling, flashback with lyrics past the impact on the before received critical acclaim, particularly had Norton performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence in its party season on it re-release and possibility of change of cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in other parties, strong affection of it, and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for conversation about racism and social injustice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model of white supremacist and its potential inadvertently glorifying ideologies. The film intends violence and extreme classes by controversy to education. Education is frequently used in the setting and if you talk about it is begging life is too soon to be twist of all time. It's just not worth it to like violence doesn't discriminate Child of him emphasized personal responsibility and personal redemption was deeply entrenched in it. It portrayed how social loss, poverty, family, and responsibility extremist beliefs and how it talk about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis in its directed by directed by Tony Kaye, written under David Duncan, starring Edward Norton and Derek Edward Furlong as Daniel Beverly D'Angelo as Doris uh, Everett as Dr. Walter Sweeney from release date October 13, 1988, generations crime, drama, social movie, and strong words rating that is restricted rating. And if you don't remember, it's summary. The story unfolds the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on Derek Williams, a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and change. Derek's transformation begins as he begins to question his secrets while experiencing prison and his strained family relationship with our general. That is the present story of Derek's efforts uh, to research his young brother Danny from following in his footsteps with our flashback that is Derek's rise to neo-Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss, and social influence. A bit about climate Derek's efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when they are inspired by Derek's past becomes involved in racial motivated attack, leading to violence and tragedy with our themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes the themes and firstly talk about racism and hate. The film explores how prejudice in person explores and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Derek's journey from to understanding demonstrate that change is possible but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and in what the cycle of violence, repeated scenes of glacial violence emphasizes heart attack, there is more violence, breathing, and endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serve as core message of the film. If you don't have familiar influence, the film underscore the impact. The film underscore the film underscore the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping lyrics and action, direction, relationship with his fathers, ranges to legacy and little brother narrative designs highlight this theme of identity and transformation, lyrics evolution, for identity, how beliefs how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined as identity. If you don't character directly beyond a charismatic but deeply troubled young man who become a new magic skinner and transformation from negative emotion in the film promotion to anyone notions powerful performance capture lyrics complexity and beyond rank impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's the footsteps, legacy livelihood, perception of it, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, a competition in teacher who tries to guide everyone away from it and whether if we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography in the film. 2018 admit culture during my season such as integrity. Flags are used with activity to provide activity and context and if you talk about music, the soundtrack features paragraph and tracks that reflect the character environment and feel emotion. If you talk about the use of music underscore things of rebellion and if you talk about narrative structure, non-linear certain flashback in the next past the impact on the before received critical acclaim particularly had Notion performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence in its party season on it pre-release and possibility of change of aggressive significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in America, the strong depiction of hate and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for communication about racism and social injustice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model of white supremacist and its potential to inadvertently glorify existing ideologies. The film intends violence and extreme classes by controversy control and education. Education is frequently used in the setting if you talk about what yeah, it is making life is beautiful to be pissed off all the time. It's just not worth it to like balance doesn't physically inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and personal redemption. For the deeply entrenched in it, portrayed how social was powerful family and extremist beliefs and all talk about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis in directed by directed by Tony K. Written and American Spelling Edward Norton Edward Furlong as Leonard Beverly D'Angelo as Doris Evans as Dr. Walker Sweeney from Date October 30, 1988 General crime drama shows movie and somewhat rating and it's restricted rating and if you don't know it's summary the story unfolds is the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on California, a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and takes transformation begins as he begins to question his secrets while experiencing prison and he restrained family relationship with our general. That is the present history of direct efforts uh, to research his young brother Danny from following in his footsteps with our flashback that is rise to neo-Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss and social violence. A bit over the climate takes efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when they are inspired by Derek's past becomes involved in racial motivated attack leading to violence and tragedy of the themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes the themes and firstly talk about racism and hate. The film explores how prejudice in person it shows and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Derek's journey from to understanding demonstrate that change is possible but often fraught with pain and recreate the film in some way whether true redemption can be achieved and what the cycle of violence, repeated scenes of glacial violence emphasizes how that there is more violence, printing, and endless cycle that experts to relate to. This cycle serves as core message of the film. If you don't have familiar influence, the film underscores the impact. The film underscores the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping its action, direct relationship with his fathers, raised legacy, and brother and highlight this theme of identity and transformation, direct evolution for identity, how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined as identity. If you don't character directly beyond the chess fatigue, but deeply troubled young man who become a huge magic skinner and transformation from a emotion in the promotion to anyone notions powerful performance capture their complexity from the art impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's the footsteps, legacy, livelihood, prescription of it, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, competition in teacher who tries to guide and away from it, and whether if we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography in the film. It already made culture during my experience in child and integrity. It all backs back value with activity provides activity and context. And if it all about music, the soundtrack features paragraph and tracks that reflect the character environment and give emotion. If we talk about the use of music. Underscore things of religion and if you talk about narrative structure, non-religious certain flashback with the next past to the impact on a before received critical acclaim, particularly had notion performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence in its party season on it pre-release and possibility of change or cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in the strong depiction of it and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for communication about racism and social justice controversy. Some critics debated the film's model of white supremacy and its potential to inadvertently glorify racism ideologies. The Film intense violence and action classes by controversy to education. Education is frequently used in the second. Uh, and if you talk about yeah, it is making life is crucial to be waste of our time. It's just not worth it to like balance doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and personal redemption. For the deeply interested in it, portrayed how social cause poverty, family, language, contributed extremist beliefs and all. Talk about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis in its directed by directed by Tony K. Written and Spelling Edward Norton and Edward Furlong and then we had Beverly and Evidence as Dr. Walker Sweeney, Military, October 13, 1988, Intelligence, Crime, Drama, Social, Shooting, and Stormwater. It's rating that is restricted rating. And if you talk about its summary, the story unfolds is the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on California, a former Nazi king and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and directs transformation begins as he begins to operation and seeks to make safe life experience in prison that he restrained family relationship with our general. That is the present history of directs efforts uh, to research his young brother Danny from following into his footsteps with our flashback depicts Derek's rise to neo-Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss, and social influence. A bit about climate Derek's efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when they are inspired by Derek's past becomes involved in racial motivated attack leading to violence and tragedy with our themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes and the themes and firstly talk about racism and hate. The film explores how prejudice in person exposure and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Derek's journey from hate to understand demonstrate that change is possible but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and it what the cycle of violence, repeated scenes of racial violence emphasizes how that there is more violence, printing, and endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serves as core message of the film. If you don't have familiar influence, the film underscores the impact. The film underscores the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping lyrics and action, direct relationship with his fathers, ranges to legacy and little brother and highlight this theme of identity and transformation, directs evolution, for identity, how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined identity. If you don't character directly beyond a chess fatigue, but deeply troubled beyond the man who become a new energy skin and transformation from negative emotion in the emotion to anyone notions powerful performance capture their complexity from the art. Impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's footsteps, legacy livelihood, perception of hate, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, a competition in teacher who tries to guide anyone away from it and where if we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography in the film. We talk about editing, rapid cuts during violence, scenes and charge and integrity. We talk about flashbacks, arguing with activity, provide backstory and context. And if we talk about music, the soundtrack features punk rap and rock tracks that reflect the character, environment and theme of emotion. If we talk about the use of music underscore things of rebellion and if we talk about narrative structure, non-linear storytelling, flashback in the next class, the impact on it before received critical acclaim, particularly Norton performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence in its party season on it pre-release and possibility of change of cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relationship, relations in order by the strong affection of hate and Its destruction cycle has made it a touchstone for conversation about racism and social justice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model of white supremacy and its potential to inadvertently glorify racism ideologies. The film intends violence and excites classes by controversy to education. Education is frequently used in the narrative setting to uh, and if you talk about then yeah, it is making life is crucial to be twist of all time. It's just not worth it to like violence doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and personal redemption. For the deeply interested in it, portrayed how social cost poverty family language contributed to extremist beliefs and all we talk about American History Act's 1998 overview and analysis in its directed by directed by Tony Kaye, written and American starring Edward Norton and Edward Furlong as Daniel Beverly D'Angelo and Doris Everything's as Dr. Bob Sweeney, the date October 13, 1988, generations crime, drama, social movie, and strong its rating and it's restricted rating. And if you don't know, it's summary, the story unfolds the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on Derek Media, a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and change. Derek's transformation begins as he begins to question his races towards his life experiencing prison that he restrained family relationship with our friend. That is the present story of Derek's efforts uh, to resource his young brother Danny from following into his footsteps with our flashback that is Derek's rise to neo-Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss and social violence. A bit about climax. Such efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when they are inspired by Derek's past becomes involved in a racial motivated attack leading to violence and tragedy with our themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes the themes and firstly talk about racism and hate. The film explores how prejudice in person exposure and how pervasive violence directs transformation, highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Directs journey from Haiti to understanding, demonstrate that change is impossible, but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and in what the cycle of violence, repeated scenes of glacial violence emphasizes how that there is more violence, repeating and endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serves as both message of fulfilling. If you don't have familiar influence, the film underscore the impact. The film underscore the film underscore the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping beliefs and action. Their exhibition with his fathers. Ranges to legacy and whether narratives and highlight this theme of identity and transformation, directs evolution, fusion for identity, how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined as identity. If you don't character directly beyond a chess fatigue, but deeply troubled beyond the man who become a new native skin and his transformation from negative emotion in the field promotion to anyone notions powerful performance capture directs complexity from the art. Impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's the footsteps, legacy livelihood, prescription of hate, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, a competition in teacher who tries to guide everyone away from it and whether we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography in the film. We talk about editing have been concerned during my experience in child and activities. We talk about flashbacks are used with activity to provide backstory and context. And if we talk about music, the soundtrack features punk rap and rock tracks that reflect the character environment and theme of emotion. If we talk about the use of music underscore things of rebellion and if we talk about narrative structure, non-linear storytelling, flashback directs past the before received critical acclaim, particularly had Norton performance and was praised for its raw emotion decision on it, prejudice, and possibility of change without cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in the strong depiction of hate and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for communication about racism and social justice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model on white supremacy and its potential to inadvertently glorify racism ideologies. The film intends violence and extreme classes by controversy to education. Education is frequently used in the narrative setting to uh, and if you talk about the yeah, it is making life is crucial to be twist of all the time. It's just not worth it to like violence doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and possibility of redemption. For the deeply entrenched in it, portrayed how social cause poverty family and contributed extremist beliefs and all to talk about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis in directed by directed by Tony K. Written and American Spelling Edward Norton and Edward Furlong as Lanyard, Beverly and Evidence as Dr. Bob Sweeney, the date October 30, 1988, generates crime, drama, social movie, and strong verdicts. Rating that is restricted rating. And if you don't know, it's summary. The story unfolds is the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on director a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and directs transformation begins as he begins to question and resist to his secret life experience in prison and his strained family relationship with our family. That is the present day story of Derek's efforts uh, to research his young brother Danny from following in his footsteps with our flashback that if there is rise to new Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss, and social violence. A bit about climax. Such efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when they are inspired by Derek's past becomes involved in racial motivated attack, leading to violence and tragedy. The themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes and The things are firstly conversation and hate the film explore how prejudice in person it shows and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Directs journey from return to understanding demonstrate that change is impossible, but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and in what was the cycle of violence. Repeated scenes of racial violence emphasizes how that there is more violence creating and endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serves as core message of the film. If you don't have familiar influence, the film underscores the impact. The film underscores the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping beliefs and action. Directs relationships with fathers, registered legacy, and brother generations. Highlight this theme of identity and transformation. Directs evolution, for identity, how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined by identity. If you don't character directly beyond the chess fatigue, but deeply troubled young man who become a new native skin and his transformation from negative emotion in the emotion to anyone notions powerful performance capture directs complexity from the memory art. Impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's footsteps, legacy livelihood, perception of hate, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, competition in teacher who tries to guide everyone away from it and whether we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography in the film. We talk about editing, rapid cuts during violent scenes such as integrity. We talk about flashbacks are used with activity to provide backstory and context. And if we talk about music, the soundtrack features contrast and tracks that reflect the character environment and feel emotion. If we talk about the use of music underscore things of rebellion and if we talk about narrative structure, Norton is certain flashback in the next past. film received critical acclaim, particularly Norton performance, and was praised for its raw emotional and violence. It sparked its season on it pre-release and possibility of change of cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in America, the strong depiction of hate and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for conversation about racism and social injustice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's total of white supremacist and its potential to inadvertently glorify racism ideologies. The film intends violence and extreme classes by controversy to education. Education is frequently used in the narrative second. Uh, and if talk about what yeah, it is making life is crucial to be twist of all time. It's just not worth it. Like violence doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and personal redemption. For the deeply entrenched in it, portrayed how social cause poverty, family, and contribute to extremist beliefs and all. Talk about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis of directed by directed by Tony K. Written and Duncan Spelling, Edward Norton, and Edward Furlong as Daniel Beverly, D'Angelo, and Doris Everything's as Dr. Bob Sweeney, Dominic Date, October 30, 1988, generations crime, drama, social, shooting, and strong bodies. Rating that is restricted, rating, and if you don't remember, it's summary. The story unfolds is the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on Derek Media, a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and change. Derek's transformation begins as he begins education and receives research life experience in prison that he restrained family relationship with our general. That is the present story of Derek's efforts uh, to research his young brother Penny from falling into his footsteps with our flashback depicts Derek's rise to neo-Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss, and social violence. A bit about climax. Jack's efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when Danny, inspired by Derek's past, becomes involved in racial motivated attack, leading to violence and tragedy over themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes and the themes and firstly talk about racism and hate. The film explores how prejudice in person influences and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Directs journey from hate to understanding demonstrate that it is impossible but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and what the cycle of violence. Repeated scenes of racial violence emphasizes how there is more violence creating and endless cycle. The experts to break this cycle serve as core message of the film. If you don't need familiar influence, the film underscore the impact. The film underscore the film underscore the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping lyrics and action directs relationship with his fathers. Registered legacy and his brother and represents highlight this theme of identity and transformation. Directs evolution from identity. How beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined that identity. If you don't character directly beyond a chess fatigue, but deeply troubled beyond the man who become a new energy skin and transformation from negative emotion in the film promotion to advanced notions, powerful performance capture directs complexity, dominant media, impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's footsteps, legacy livelihood, perception of hate, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, a competition in teacher who tries to guide her away from it and whether we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography in the film. We talk about editing have been considered during my experience in child and integrity. We talk about flashbacks are used in activity to provide backstory and context. And if we talk about music, the soundtrack features punk rap and rock tracks that reflect the character environment and theme of emotion. If we talk about the use of music, underscore things of rebellion and if you have a narrative structure, non-linear storytelling with flashback and direct paths to the impact on a before received critical acclaim, particularly Norton performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence. It is part of season 1. It pre-release and possibility of change of cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in America, the star depiction of it, and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for conversation about racism and social justice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model of white supremacy and its potential to inadvertently glorify racism ideologies. The film intends violence and extreme classes by controversy to education is frequently used in the narrative setting to and if you talk about the yeah, it is making life is crucial to be twist of all time. It's just not worth it to like violence doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and personal redemption. For the deeply entrenched in it, portrayed how social cause poverty and extremist beliefs and all about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis of directed by directed by Tony Kaye, written and American spelling Edward Norton and Edward Furlong as Daniel Beverly and Evidence as Dr. Walker Sweeney, Dominic Date, October 13, 1988, General crime, drama, social, and strong bodies. Rating that is restricted rating. And if you don't know, it's summary. The story unfolds the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on California, a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and directs transformation begins as he begins to operation and seeks to make safe life experiencing prison and he restrained family relationship with our general. That is the present story of direct efforts to shows his young brother Henry from following in his footsteps with our flashback that is rise to neo-Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss and social influence. If we talk about climate takes efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted and then inspired by its past becomes involved in racial motivated attack, leading to violence and tragedy of the themes and revolution. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes and the themes and firstly talk about racism and hate. The film explores how prejudice in person influences and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Directs journey from hate to understanding. Demonstrate that is impossible, but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and in what was the cycle of violence. Repeated scenes of racial violence emphasizes how that there is more violence creating an endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serves as both message of the film. If you don't familiar influence, the film underscore the impact. The film underscore the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping its action, directs relationship with his fathers, ranges to legacy and his brother and highlight this theme of identity and transformation, directs evolution, fusion for identity, how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined as identity. If you don't character directly, we are the charismatic but deeply troubled. We are the man who becomes a new magic skin and his transformation from a emotion in the emotion to advanced notions, powerful performance capture directs complexity of the language. We are impregnable younger brother eager to follow his brother's footsteps, legacy livelihood, perception of hate, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, a competition in teacher who tries to guide her away from hate and violence. If we talk about stylistic elements, first we talk about cinematography in the film. It already had been considered during my senior research and integrity. Flashbacks are used with activity to provide backstory and context. And if you talk about music, the soundtrack features punk rap and rock tracks that reflect the current life environment and theme of emotion. If you talk about the use of music underscore things of rebellion and if you talk about narrative structure, Norton is certain flashback revealing the next past, the impact on before received critical acclaim, particularly had Notion performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence. It is party season on it pre-release and possibility of change without cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in the star depiction of it and its destruction cycle has made it a touchstone for communication about racism and social justice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model on white supremacist and its potential to inadvertently glorify and ideologies. The film intends violence against race classes by controversy to education is frequently used in the narrative setting to uh, and if you talk about the yeah, it is making life is crucial to be twist of all the time. It's just not worth it to like violence doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and personal redemption. Hollywood deeply entrenched in it portrayed how social loss, poverty, family, language contribute to extremist beliefs and all. We talk about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis of directed by directed by Tony K. Written and David Duncan Spelling, Edward Norton, and Edward Furlong, and then we had Beverly being and every books as Dr. Walker Sweeney, Dominic October 30, 1988, generations crime, drama, social movie, and strong but it's rating that it's restricted, rated, and if you don't know it's summary, the story unfolds is the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on California, a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and change. Character transformation begins as he begins to operation and seeks to make safe friends while experiencing prison and he restrained family relationship with our general. That is the present story of director uh, for to research his young brother Henry from following in his footsteps. Without flashback, lyrics rise to new Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss, and social influence. Without climax, Trek's efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when inspired by Derek's past becomes involved in racial motivated attack, leading to violence and tragedy. The themes and redemption, firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes the themes and firstly talk about the scene and hate. The film explores how prejudice in person influences and how conviction of violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Derek's journey from Haiti to understanding demonstrate that change is impossible, but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and in what was the cycle of violence. Repeated scenes of racial violence emphasizes how there is more violence creating an endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serves as core message of the film. If you don't familiar influence, the film underscore the impact. The film underscore the film underscore the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping its action, directs relationship with his fathers, registered legacy, and his brother benefits and his highlight this theme of identity and transformation. Directs evolution for identity. How beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined by identity. If you don't character directly beyond a charismatic but deeply troubled young man who become a new magic skill and his transformation from negative emotion in the film promotion to Edward Norton's powerful performance capture directs complexity from the memory art. Impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's footsteps, the legacy livelihood, perception of it, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, competition in teacher who tries to guide and away from it and wherein we talk about stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography. The film of editing admin cuts during my premium surcharge and regional integrity. It tracks webs are used with activity provides backstory and context and if you talk about music, the soundtrack features from graph and tracks that reflect the character environment and theme emotions. If you talk about the use of music underscore things of religion and if you talk about narrative structure, non-religious certain flashback in direct past to the impact on a before received critical acclaim, particularly had Norton performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence. It is part of season on it pre-release and possibility of change of cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in America, the star of fiction of it, and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for conversation about racism and social justice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model of white supremacist and its potential inadvertently glorifying ideologies. The film intends violence and ethnic classes by controversy to education. Education is frequently used in the narrative setting and if you talk about for yeah, it is begging life is crucial to be twist of all the time. It's just not worth it to like violence doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and personal redemption for the deeply entrenched in it portrayed how social cause poverty family and contribute to extremist beliefs and all talk about American History Acts 1998 overview and analysis within its directed by directed by Tony K. Written and David Duncan Spelling Edward Norton and Derek Edward Furlong as Daniel Beverly D'Angelo as Doris Evan Brooks as Dr. Bob Sweeney, Dominic Day, October 13, 1988, Generations, Crime, Drama, Social, Movie, and Stormwater. It's rating that it's restricted rating. And if you don't know its summary, the story unfolds is the story unfolds in Los Angeles and focuses on Derek Media, a former Nazi skin and who after serving time in prison for murder seeks redemption and change. Derek's transformation begins as he begins to question his races towards secrets while experiencing prison and he strained family relationship with our general. That is the present story of Derek's efforts to shoot his young whether any from following in his footsteps, bit of a flashback, like if there is rise to neo-Nazi extreme fueled by racial tension, personal loss, and social influence. A bit about climate takes efforts to protect his brother are tragically thwarted when they are inspired by Derek's past becomes involved in a racial motivated attack, leading to violence and tragedy with our themes and redemption. Firstly, let's talk about hate and the cycle of violence are central to the narrative. We talk about themes and the things and firstly talk about the scene and hate, the film explores how prejudice in person influences and how pervasive violence directs transformation highlights the possibility of change, but also the difficulty of escaping trained ingrained beliefs, redemption and forgiveness. Derek's journey from to understanding demonstrate that change is impossible, but often fraught with pain and regret. The film examines whether true redemption can be achieved and what was the cycle of violence. Repeated scenes of racial violence emphasizes how there is more violence printing and endless cycle. The experts to relate this cycle serves as core message of the film. If you don't familiar influence, the film underscore the impact. The film underscore the film underscore the impact of family, community, and environment in shaping lyrics and action, direct relationship with his fathers, ranges to legacy and his brother and his sons. Highlight this theme of identity and transformation, direct evolution for identity, how beliefs shape who we are and how change can be defined as identity. If you don't character directly, we are the charismatic but deeply troubled young man who becomes a new magic skin and his transformation from negative emotion in the film promotes to anyone notions powerful performance capture directs complexity dominant in the art. Impressionable younger brother eager to follow his brother's footsteps, legacy livelihood, perception of it, and the tragic consequences of influence. If we talk about Dr. Sweeney, a competition in teacher tries to guide and away from it and where it becomes stylistic elements. First we talk about cinematography, the film photography editing, rapid cuts during violent scenes such as animation integrity. Photographs webs are used with activity to provide backstory and context. And if you talk about music, the soundtrack features phonograph and tracks that reflect the character, environment, and theme of the film. If you talk about the use of music underscore things of religion and if you talk about narrative structure, non-religious certain flashback in the next past, the factor before received critical acclaim, particularly had Norton performance and was praised for its raw emotion and violence in its party season on it pre-release and possibility of change or cultural significance. The film remains a powerful commentary on race relations in America, the star the fiction of it, and its destruction cycle have made it a touchstone for conversation about racism and social justice without controversy. Some critics debated the film's model of white supremacy and its potential to inadvertently glorify racist ideologies. The film intends violence and racial classes by controversy to education is frequently used in the narrative setting uh, and if you talk about the yeah, it is begging life is crucial to be twist of all time. It's just not worth it to like violence doesn't discriminate inside the film emphasize the personal responsibility and responsibility of redemption. For the deeply interested in it, portrayed how social loss, poverty, family, language, contributed to extremist beliefs and all about